So a few weeks ago, we ran a story about the world's blackest paint. A paint so dark that it absorbs over 99% of the light which hits it. Well, I'm here today with some wonderful news to tell you that balance has been restored to the universe because scientists have also created the world's whitest paint. Yin and yang is back in play.
Can't do anything. Blackest paint exists. White people got to make the whitest paint. Honestly.
Always.
I apologize. Anyway, it is even whiter than the previous whitest paint, obviously. And the hope is that it's going to help tackle global warming.
Is it because it doesn't absorb much heat?
It is exactly that, Jam.
Thank you. Next story.
So sunlight comes in, and a proportion of that light gets absorbed by materials, including paint, and it turns into heat, some of it. And a proportion gets reflected back towards space, and then a proportion of that that's reflected back towards space gets Uno reverse carded back at us again by the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Corry is nodding, confirming that I have understood global warming. Thank you, Corry.
Yes, good job.
Hell yeah, I was concerned. So the point of extremely white paint is basically, as Jam said, to reduce the amount that gets absorbed and turned into heat so we can just fire it back at the sun and send it into the cold, dead vacuum of space. Now, unlike Corry with the black paint, I don't have a sample of this really white paint, unfortunately. But I have got some white paper.
Wow.
I know. So white
I've never
paper.
seen this before.
Well, it's fresh off the press, literally. So white paper. This reflects about 75 to 85% of the light, which actually I was surprised at. I thought it would reflect more than that, but about 75 to 85% of the light gets reflected by this here white sheet of paper. Very good. And a standard sort of commercial mirror would reflect. Oh, hang on. A standard commercial mirror. I know. All the props. Actually,
I was so curious as to what a mirror was,
That's
but you've
mirror.
answered the question for me.
Well, what I've written here is that a standard commercial mirror reflects around 90% of the light, but this is a very dirty mirror, so probably doesn't reflect 90% of the light. And some mirrors can reflect up to 95%, and then some, even like the perfect mirrors, they can reflect 99% of the light. Now, the previous record holder of white paint would reflect around 95.5% of the light. Commercial paints on the market that are reflecting light professionally, like the purpose is to cool the buildings they are in, they will reflect around about 90% of the light. Now, this new paint reflects, can I get a drum roll? Champ trying to do drum roll whilst also cutting the cameras is great to watch. This new paint reflects 98.1% of the sunlight, which is more than mirrors.
Woo.
Can I look at my reflection in it?
No, because it scatters the light. It doesn't reflect it perfectly. It just reflects it in any direction rather than directly where it, like at, what is it? Angle of incident equals angle of reflection. None of that with this paint. Angle of incidence equals absolutely nothing to do with angle of reflection.
Could go anywhere.
Yeah. Absolutely. Otherwise, yes, all the buildings would be reflective, which I suppose might be good. No? Oh, no, because would they like superheat?
That would not be good. No, I mean, it wouldn't be good because, because if it was reflecting light.
The sun, yeah.
If the sun was coming in from here, and depending on the way it reflected, it could reflect it down. It would, no, I don't think. I think scattering is probably for the best.
There is that wonderful story of a building that was built with a curve, and then it focused the light and it melted cars on the floor. And then that guy built another building, and his other building did that as well.
I'm just going to build this building. I mean, right across from where my ex-wife parks her car. No reason. No reason.
Dear. So to put this into perspective, this building can cool... this paint can cool buildings more than like most home air conditioners would be able to cool when it's painted on the roof of the building, right? So that's pretty decent considering it's not using any electricity.
The inside of the building is
is cooled. So this is made of something called barium sulfate, which is a material generally used as a contrast medium in X-rays, and I think CAT scans as well, potentially. You basically put it into the esophagus and the stomach and the intestine, and it allows you to sort of get better images of those areas with X-rays, because obviously the stomach wouldn't block X-rays normally because it is all squishy, and X-rays only are stopped by non-squishy things, as we all know.
And that's science.
Soft tissue and hard tissue, yeah.
non-squishy and squishy. The fact that it's already used in medicine kind of means that we know the risks of it. And those risks can include things like stomach cramps and hives and itching. So don't go around licking walls, especially white walls, is my advice.
Some good advice, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
I thought about that one for a while.
But bear in mind, the world's blackest paint is non-toxic, so you can lick all the walls you want if it's painted with that. So.
You're really selling it again.
I'm selling it.
Yeah.
Black versus white.
Excuse me. This is my. Don't steal my thunder with your non-toxic black paint. I'll stick with my highly toxic white paint. Thank you very much. So, to make it, one thing I found really interesting about this is that they have to have a variety of sizes of barium sulfate particles. They're the material that reflects the light. And that is in order to reflect different wavelengths of light. So it's not just a case of like finding a really white thing and then like grinding it down, sticking it in a paint pot. This is actual like science going on here. And so how well does it work? So commercial normal paints, they reflect quite a bit of light, but they can't get the surface of the wall they are on to be cooler than the area surrounding them. So if you touch a wall, it's not going to be cooler with sort of current commercial paints than say the air temperature or the air temperature, the surroundings, right? This new paint, however, guess what?
What?
I think you can guess. It can do the thing I just said the others can't do. It can make walls cooler.
Amazing.
No way.
I know.
That's pretty cool.
So outside at nighttime, this paint can keep surfaces over 10 degrees Celsius cooler than their surroundings, which is pretty incredible. And in the daytime, even in the daytime, when the sun is sort of beaten down, the walls can be 4.4 degrees Celsius cooler than the surroundings. So like, if you imagine it's a hot day out, the sun is beating down on this bright white wall, and you touch the wall, and the wall is cooler than the air around. I think that's I don't know, it feels like a weird thing.
Be hugging the wall, to be honest.
You would, yeah, exactly. You'd be hugging the wall. And so... Now, how is this going to stop global warming? Jamp, you kind of alluded to this. I've kind of explained, but
I was like, it's just not absorbing. It's the opposite of that.
Yeah.
It's not letting much heat absorb, much light.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
also imagine it would help that you're not using as much electricity to keep buildings.
So that's the key second point. Yeah, exactly. Which is that not only are you cooling things by literally sending light back to space, you're reducing the amount of air conditioning used. And there's like, we don't have air conditioning as particularly standard thing in homes in this country, but in America especially, like I've heard of people who like, there are areas of America where you run between buildings because it's so hot outside.
Australia.
And Australia, exactly.
Yeah. Australia is my favorite part of America.
Yeah.
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 So the third way this could help stop global warming, however, is that scientists are considering painting a bunch of the Earth white. Corry.
This is the Futurama thing of dropping a big ice cube in the water. Like, you say we'll do this, okay, and it could help with your calculations, but are we actually going to paint parts of the world just white?
Well, it depends. If you're painting a bunch of the rooftops white, you could have a sort of target as a planet, although we don't have planetary targets really. They have sort of targets set by organizations that don't have any power, and then
no one meets
organizations with power who don't meet the targets set by the organizations without power.
Exactly. Everyone comes together and says we're going to make sure that we don't make the world hotter,
aren't we?
And then they do it, and then they're like, better luck next time. We'll try again.
Yeah, exactly. So their calculations suggest that if you can paint 1% of the Earth's surface with this white paint, that will have a measurable impact on the fight against climate change. So I calculated what this would mean. So the Earth is about 500 million square kilometers surface area, but obviously 3/4 of that is sea. So we're actually looking about 3 to 4% of the land. But then, according to some information I found from the University of Texas, 57% of the land is uninhabitable. So you'd want to paint that area, right? So really, you're looking for about 6 to 7% of the uninhabitable land So you'd paint that. But then 33% of the land is desert, so you can't paint that because you'd finish painting it and then the wind would blow and you have to paint it again. So maybe you'd paint the mountains instead. So 24% of the land is mountains. So if you painted like 15% of the mountains, then you'd have a measurable impact on global warming. But mountains are probably quite hard to paint. So I just decided that somebody else will figure this out.
Phineas and Ferb, actually, we saw them paint.
They did.
Yeah, they painted a city. They just had a big roller and a plane, and
it went right over the top.
Seriously though, honestly thinking about this is one of those things where they say we could paint 1% of the Earth's surface. That's, to anyone, that sounds like, oh, that's not very much. It's 1%. As we've seen, that's a lot of surface area.
Yeah.
Second of all, this paint is toxic. Uninhabited doesn't necessarily mean uninhabited. It just means people aren't living there.
Not uninhabited, uninhabitable. So like it's areas that you couldn't live on, like a desert or mountains, although people do live in mountains.
Yeah, but people live in mountains and people live in deserts and also animals, is my point.
Oh, but they don't count.
That's the... See, I just feel like, look, here's the thing. I just feel like if the goal is to save the planet, if you need to kill off all of the sort of biodiversity in the desert to do so, it's
you
like...
may have missed the point.
It's like, what's the point of this? If we're just going to sacrifice all of this life just to make the planet a little bit cooler. I don't know.
Well, if you can paint loads of rooftops white, we'll be good.
Yeah, and then all the birds will make them not white.
That's the thing. Actually, this article did talk about like this stuff is really good when it's clean and when it's just been painted on. Because it's just been invented, we don't know then over time whether that gets less reflective. And also, it has to be clean. It's not going to be reflective. It's not clean. And so you have to, like, if you look at bridges, for example, near roads, they get horribly discolored quite quickly. It's one of the exciting things about electric cars is that suddenly we might actually be able to make our roadways look quite nice because they're not going to suddenly have soot and crap all over them from the exhausts.
And especially, I mean, in the US, especially, there'll be a lot of dust in particularly the hot areas, right? There'll be a lot of dust blowing about, sand, all that sort of stuff. I just feel like this is one of those ideas that sounds great. And then you think about it and you're like, wait, hold on, this isn't going to work. Like, I don't know if you know this. Do you know how long the actual substance, is it barium sulfate, how long that sort of lasts?
So that was one of the problems was they don't actually know yet.
It's very new.
We could paint the entire world. It degrades after a year. You know?
There's a constantly clean 1% of the Earth will repaint it.
This is one of those, like, have you seen Snowpiercer?
Yeah.
Dude, this is one of those Snowpiercer solutions where they're like, okay, we're going to make this, like, release this gas into the atmosphere that makes it cooler, and then, oh no, we've turned the world into an ice age. Let's all get on this train and live there forever, right?
Oopsies.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like, it sounds like a great idea. I'm not to rain on your paint parade, but
well, you already did. So not to do this thing I already did, but I've done it.
I just feel like they're gonna have to constantly repaint it.
Yeah, I mean, that'll create jobs. So there you go.
Oh,
you know?
true.
There we go.
True.
We're solving the problems.
I think
What do you do? I paint mountains white. I continuously repaint the desert every time it gets windy.
It's a tough job, but someone's got to do it.
I think it's the Sydney Harbour Bridge. I don't know. I'm not sure if I got the bridge correct, but there's a bridge. I think it's the Sydney Harbour Bridge where they have to paint it, and then as soon as they're done, they have to go back to the beginning and start repainting it again.
Yeah.
Just stop painting it. I think just leave it.
Just let it go.
Let it go for a bit. Yeah. Or make a robot do it. Have a robot that paints the
But that
bridge
would
for you.
create jobs, Corry.
Robot builders, robot trainers.
No, but they'd be built by other robots.
Who builds those robots?
Robots.
And those robots?
Robots.
We could go on for a
Robots
long
All the way down.
If you enjoyed that clip, head over to patreon.com/SCI Guys where you can find the full show. Or you can stay here and catch up on old SCI Guys episodes. Or you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook at SCI Guys Pod to find out when we're doing more live shows.